I came here to talk about what I consider to be, at first I was going to use the word wish, Baba's wish, Baba's desire for us. But I changed it because I wanted the more correct word. I'm here to talk about Baba's command for us, and emphasize that word any way you want, because I really believe in my heart of hearts I'm talking about Baba's command for us. And that is to awaken in this lifetime, to awaken to the truth of who we truly are, to Atma, to pure consciousness, to Satchidananda. We pay intellectual understanding of those words. And because of the world in chaos, I think it's high time people start talking about paying more than lip service, let's say, to those words, because they're so very important to awaken to the truth of who we really are. It's the only subject I've talked about for 26 years. I chose to talk about this, as I hinted a moment ago, because in my estimation, so few other people do talk about this. And I think I'm being too generous. I've been around Sai Baba people for many years now, and I've never heard a talk on this topic before. I've never known of groups discussing this topic before in their study circles, and I don't know why it's not a hot-button topic. It's the most important thing Baba's ever told us. Many of us have other more important things to do, I realize that, or so we think we do, and I include myself among the many, but I'm now finding that more and more Baba devotees, finally, I'm so happy to hear this, I'm so happy to see it happening, are turning inward to find their own truest identity. And there are reasons why it's the most important thing on earth that we do. Now, I come from a long line of broadcasters who use superlatives because it's the only way to gain and keep an audience. I'm not talking in superlatives when I say this. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. In my talk, I plan to bolster it with comments from Baba's own lips, from a whole slew of wonderful quotes I've found over the years, from his own heart, from his own lips, that says the same thing. And we've heard many of them. And we're very polite, loving people. We don't discuss their importance. We cheerfully and lovingly accept them. And then we move on to the next thing. Usually it's our next seva project, which is really worth a lot in this world, no matter what it is. So, if my plan is to start talking about including a few Baba quotes, I'll begin with one you all know backwards and forwards. This cosmos does not exist. It's an illusion. It never was, it isn't now, it never will exist. The creation of the cosmos, the dissolution of the cosmos, the dissolution of the billions upon billions of individuals emerging and merging, all of this is but a dream. Baba Thought of the Day is written in Prashanti, July 30th, 2004. Why would Baba ever say such a thing? Do you think he meant it? Are we supposed to sit up and pay attention because they came from his lips? Is it true? Well, I think it is, and I think I've been reminding myself for this past quarter century to come to grips with the term as to why I haven't awoken to this any more than I have. He asks, and why am I so interested in this topic? People ask when I bring this topic up as if I'm an authority on it. I'm not an authority on it. I have a curious mind about it. Why would I be so interested on learning who we really are as opposed to who we think we are? On seeking enlightenment now? Here's how long I've been interested in this topic. It began in 1959 for me. That's a long time ago. It might have actually started a couple of years before that. Since I first became a teenager, I've gone around muttering to myself, who am I? Why am I here? What is it all about? But I've always had those questions come to the forefront of my consciousness. And for years, they've been in vain. I never found answers. But I got a pretty good handle on that now. Fast forward to 1968. We started in 59. We're up to 1968. A big year in the life of Ted Henry. I first heard Sai Baba's name and saw his image in 1968 when I was in the United States Peace Corps, serving as a volunteer down in Paraguay in South America for 2 years. He came to me in a tattered old magazine I was reading. It was tattered, it was torn, it had no cover. I have no idea to this day which news magazine it was, but there on page 22, who's this guy? It's a quarter-page photograph of Sri Sathya Sai Baba. 2/3 of the page included his text about why he's here on this earth, what he's to talk about that others have a yearning to hear but don't know it. The truth of who they are, the oneness, Advaita Vedanta, non-duality was his mission. I read it, it registered, and I thought I would immediately forget it. I've never forgotten it. Up until the day I first became a Baba devotee, I could have told you exactly what that was like, and I still have that memory burned in my consciousness, and I think it's there for a reason. And that's nearly 60 years ago that I had that experience. Baba quote, "The individual exists only in your imagination, only in your mind. It's just an illusion, it isn't real." How many times are we going to hear him say things like this before we start to really get it? When the one self is everywhere, when it is one without a second, then where is the individual? It is only in your imagination. Double score, double stress. The self alone is real, and he's not talking about the flimsy mind-body Ted self. Thank you very much. Baba's been building on this theme in the years that I knew him, slowly but surely and quite firmly. Here's more from Sai Baba. Baba quote, "You are in this body in order to realize the God you really are. This body is the cocoon you have spun around yourselves by means of your impulses and your desires. Use it while it lasts. Use the cocoon while it lasts to grow wings so that you can escape from the body." Baba wants us to escape from body consciousness. He couldn't be much clearer than that. And in this particular quote, he doesn't say it, but he says it in other quotes. Now's the time. Not in the next reincarnation you experience, or 5 reincarnations down the road, or at the point of your death 50 years from now. Now is the time. To me, what Baba was saying was, I'm giving you a way out of your cocoon right now. I'm telling you how to do it. If you were an engineer, I'd tell you to go home and build it for me. I'm giving you a way out of Maya right now, the way out of the dream of who you think you are. He wants us to ask ourselves, who am I, really? Well, that's music to my ears, going back to what I used to say. How do I live to my fullest essence? And how do I do self-inquiry to better understand the self Baba refers to here, that he says I am? Let's move on to another year now, 1997. I met Jody Cleary, the woman who is to become my wife, at a spiritual seminar in Cleveland in an event that hosted members from 17 spiritual traditions or religions in Cuyahoga County around Cleveland. Later, after a dinner, I asked if I could see her again because I was fascinated with her take on the discussions that we had. And I thought she would probably say yes.
But she said no because of Sai Baba.
Well, okay, how about if I move it down several weeks from when I first said, no, I'm sorry. And then I said, it sounds like you're going someplace important. She said, well, I'm going to be taking the time between now and then for how I need to prepare to go to India. I'm going there to meet a very important man. She didn't tell me his name. She didn't tell me he's a spiritual figure. She didn't tell me anything about him. So I asked, well, who are you going to go see? And his name is Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. And you should have seen the look on her face when I told her, well, I know who Sai Baba is. And I cited chapter and verse of the 2 run-ins, you might say, I had from India to Paraguay of learning about Sai Baba. This much about Sai Baba. I knew his name, but she knows that I am eternally grateful that she did share with me this person by name. Once we became good friends after that, Jody went to India for her second trip to see Sai Baba. She went with 5 of her Sai Baba girlfriends from Cleveland. He came up to her and said, how many?
And then said,
go. He talked to the first 5 women there together as a group, and then eventually turned his attention squarely to Jody.
And asked her, "How is that boy? Baba, you know I'm not married. I don't have a son. Do you mean Ted?"
Yes, yes, he will come after marriage.
And much to our great surprise, Sai Baba was right.
And to her credit, and to the credit of the 5 other young women who were with her, they never said a word until after I proposed to Jody for marriage. It's an amazing story. But it wasn't until I met her, and there's a whole story involved with that, which I won't get into, but I really knew I was supposed to be with Baba. And she proved that to me by never insisting a word, just taking me to budgeons and wonderful places where we would sit down and talk in the Sai study circle in Cleveland. All foreign to me, but eventually it started to click, and it was because of her. Baba quote, "You are pure awareness. The world is an illusion, nothing more. When you understand this fully, desires, they fall away. You find peace, for indeed, there is nothing." Ashtavakra Gita 15:17. Soon thereafter, I learned something new about Baba. I learned this over and over. Some of his comments really as they pertain to questions being asked of him. And one of these questions was from an outsider who was there to see Baba for the first time. "Baba, Mr. Baba, are you God? My friends tell me you are God." "Yes, I am God." You know his answer better than I do. "Yes, I am God," Baba would say, "and so are you. The only difference is that you just don't yet quite know that." Now, those aren't his exact words. Those are my words trying to capture his essence. And that made a big difference on me because I found that very hard also when I first heard that lesson that say after me, "I am God, I am God, I am no different from God." We were talking about that, Ganesh and I, last night, just driving over here, how big of a jolt that is for a person, especially in the West, especially a practicing Catholic who would hear something that sounds out of this world. It sounds like heresy. It's a sacrilege. But gradually, as you come along following Baba, it all falls into place, and it really starts to make sense. It's my belief that if people really stop to consider just that one simple yet not so simple phrase, the answer he gives to people, "I am God, you are God," they will become aware of the single most important revelation of their lifetime. If they want to dissect it a little bit, study it from the left to the right and from the right to the left, they can't help but come to that conclusion. But understanding this is one thing, accepting and understanding this intellectually is quite another thing, but then acting on it in a most meaningful way, directly from the heart, is the ultimate way to act on this. The following year was 1998, and that year was my first trip to Prashanti Nilayam. I went there all alone. I didn't know a soul. I couldn't help but notice how warm and friendly people were, and I noticed something real quickly. It didn't matter where I turned, I would find somebody interesting or something interesting that added to my awareness of where I was and who I was with. I'm not used to having things like this happen, and it happened every hour of every day I was there.
This is where I first heard of Baba's greatest lesson to repeat after me.
"I am God, I am God, I am no different from God." Baba really made it clear to all of us. He would say, your best friend thinks he knows who you are. Why wouldn't he? He's your best friend. He's been around you for years and years. And of course, you think you know who you are. Why wouldn't you? Then there's the real you. That's Baba's message to us all. And that being bears no resemblance whatsoever to the mind-body illusory Ted. You mean I'm not who I think I am? I mean, really. So the question is, why don't we turn inward when we hear just those messages alone that pique our interest as if they're everyday conversation pieces when they're really not? Well, there are reasons for that. Our world is filled with distractions. That keeps us from turning inwards. I used to think of it as an excuse, but I no longer think that. I take it seriously. The world is filled with distractions that keep us away from turning inward. So much so that we forget about our spiritual growth. even doing seva. This is especially hard to do, to turn within, when there is so much good work in this turbulent world to do that could occupy our time 24 hours a day. This isn't my opinion, by the way. It's the opinion of hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of Sai devotees I've interviewed over the past 27 years. That's a lot of interviews with Baba people. They tell me they just don't have the time to do the hard work of turning inward. Some even tell me it's so foreign. So when people would say it's hard work, I would say that one of the greatest messages that I have today is that it's definitely not hard work. It is filled with reward after reward after reward. It is measured in how we see ourselves changing. It's noticeable. I want to emphasize and draw 15 lines under the word noticeable. Most people don't engage in it because they think it's going to be a long plumbing, drilling, digging down into the psyche of who we think we are to find out what we really are. And yeah, it can be that, but the changes come starting almost immediately. Changes that you notice, changes for the better. You notice the changes as you start to dig inwards the way Baba has taught us to do that. And these quotes buster my conversation on exactly how he teaches us to do that. Baba devotee. Am I God, Baba? Yes, you are Atma, the one self. You are permanent. You are the physical. But the physical is not self. You are the self. You are God. Think this way always. We have to understand what Baba means when he says the world is not real. Sorry, kids. The world is not real. It's just a globe, a piece of metal twirling around in a movie. You know, we put ourselves at some risk if we go around talking about this too much. You just can't do that. If I tell my neighbor that the universe and all the beings in it, including himself, his children, and his wife, and his neighbor Ted, if none of that's real and they don't ever exist and never have existed, well, because he's my neighbor and likes me, the very least he'll do is smile. Baba said earlier, the cosmos does not exist. It's an illusion. It never was, never has been, never will be. That's just pretty doggone heavy stuff. The cosmos means you and me. And when Baba says we don't exist, are we going to argue with them? And the antidote to that is investigation. He used a whole bunch of words that meant the same thing. Start digging a little bit. Find out for yourself if I'm telling you the truth or not. You might just find out who you really are. That's where self-investigation from Sai Baba's lips comes into play. Baba teaches us that there is a way to live within the dream, within the drama, within the movie, having loving family surrounding us, having really important seva work to be engaged in, serving others, singing bhajans, loving life, all these things that are important to us. And simultaneously, there's also a way to discover that we are not at all the dream. That's the important thing, which is difficult for most of us to understand because we don't have the free will, as many of us probably here in this room still think we truly do. As perhaps there's a little bit of that belief in me yet too. Baba tells us that we are living as actors in a movie. They don't have free will, so they would get fired. The free will is only in the mind of the director and the scriptwriter, not for any of the actors. And I'm an actor. We are living in a marvelous and beautiful and sweet and sour and sometimes horrific dream. And it all seems real. The movie seems real, the dream seems real. But in the final analysis, what is a dream? It's just a dream. That word is used purposely so that we know better, more clearly, what we're talking about when we say life is only a dream. That lesson alone has taken me pretty much of a lifetime to learn. I get it now. I can be really slow at the switch. I can be in a study circle and go over the same passage in the same book we're studying about Sai Baba 7 times. Well, that's a slight exaggeration. 3 times, 4 times. And only on the 4th time does, pow, I awaken to its greatest significance. Before, I always understood the words, but every once in a while it just tackles your heart. Oh, that's what this means. That's what Baba's talking about. I began learning the lesson that Baba teaches in 1989 about that I might not be who I think I am. This is 1989, before I met Baba, when I became a student of a book called A Course in Miracles. If I asked people to raise their hand, probably only one or two might come up. So A Course in Miracles was written back in the mid-'60s in America. And what was it noted for? It was noted to be the best book ever conceived to bring the idea, an explanation of non-duality, of Advaita Vedanta to those in the West, so that they might come to have a curiosity about learning about why they aren't who they think they are. How do I say this? How do I know this? I'm sort of a professional Course in Miracles groupie. I'll tell you why. That book alone has been so powerful. I started to learn things I didn't think I was comfortable with, but I became comfortable with them. That book alone was so powerful, it did change my life forever. So I've had a couple of signature events that changed my life. I lived my first 50 years in absolute positive duality, and I loved it. It was through non-duality that I learned that God is not only in you, He is you. Starting in 1989, I was in weekly study circles for 27 years with group members of Course in Miracles study circles around the country, even in Puttaparthi. I heard about that, and I once took my big Course in Miracles book to Puttaparthi in the ashram, staying there, living there, and found study circles with the Course in Miracles, and found Westerners reading it as if it was the new Bible, because its lesson was Baba's lesson. Well, in 1989, in those study circles, eventually they bled over into the time when I got to know who Sai Baba was. And this is two occasions I'm talking about here of being a student of A Course in Miracles and a follower of Sai Baba. Two occasions that Baba actually confirmed the truth to me, to my face in person in the interview room about A Course in Miracles. I never thought my first time to see him, I was alone, Jody wasn't with me, I didn't know anybody there. There were a bunch of people in the interview room. I was fascinated by the questions, more fascinated by the answers Baba gave. And slowly but surely, he would turn his attention to me as if he noticed me. And he nodded to me to ask my question. Now, I hadn't prepared any question. What do you ask an avatar? I mean, really, for a guy like me with a limited background, what do you ask? Thought went right through my mind. Baba, did you write A Course in Miracles? I said it that fast. And without blinking an eye, in a nanosecond, he said, yes. And there was silence. And I froze. I didn't know what to ask a follow-up question. Here, the king of interviewers. I didn't know how to come up with a follow-up question to Sai Baba. What do you mean, yes? What do you mean by that? You wrote The Course in Miracles? I can laugh about it now, but I didn't laugh that day. I really had to live through that night because I wasn't sure what was going on. Well, the next time then, a year later, maybe it was a year and a half later, I'm in the interview room once again. And this time I take in my own posse of people, a bunch of friends of mine from Cleveland, Ohio, who are followers of Sai Baba and members of Course in Miracles study circles. And he talked to various people from other parts of the world before he turned his attention to me. And I didn't know that he would, and I didn't know I was going to ask a question. And I didn't know he was going to tell me to ask me a question. Well, what should I ask? My goodness, should I ask the same Baba, did you write A Course in Miracles? Yes. And then he paused for a second, and then he said, with a smile on his face, best book I ever wrote. Oh, you should have seen my pals. They love me for bringing them halfway around the world to hear that one sentence. Best book I ever wrote. Baba, what do you mean by that? People in that room could not believe what they heard, obviously. That book is 1,000 pages long. Actually, I looked it up the other night. I've got one sitting right above me at my workstation at home. It's 1,330 pages long. He wrote a book with 1,300 pages. Officially, the writer is unknown. It's written in New York City, mostly at Columbia University. Its primary purpose to teach us the best understandings of true self, non-duality. Its message is Baba's message, his most important message. My life as a new Baba devotee was beginning to change, and it was a visceral change I was feeling. I could actually feel changes that I never had before being on a spiritual path. Because I've been on this path so long, and because I'm a journalist who can occasionally muster up the courage when necessary to ask tough questions. I mean, priests can ask tough questions, doctors can, lawyers can, policemen can, and reporters can. Reporters today are a different breed of people from when I was in the business. But most people would just answer the question. So I found the courage to start asking people who I suspected might be awakened if they are that, if they are self-realized, self-aware. Well, I was surprised how many times I learned that the answer was yes, but it wasn't from their own lips. Nobody would ever say that about themselves. The best gauge to go by, if you ask somebody if they're awakened, self-realizing, if they say yes, you know they're not. They would never say that. So you have to recognize them by little traits you pick up along the way as you observe this. So I have an interesting hobby of observing people who might be awakened, and I approach them, and I talk to them, and I find out that they are. They don't say so, but hang around them long enough and you can just feel that they are. You identify them by 4 factors, but there's really like 400 factors you can identify them by. The 4 I'm thinking about is their humility, their egolessness, their compassion, and their love. Some are Sai Baba devotees, others are followers of Ramana Maharshi, the Ramakrishna order, Nisargadatta, A Course in Miracles, and others might be Catholic mystics, contemporary Catholic mystics, and independent spiritual seekers. Some of them might be individuals sitting right next to you right now. I saw one person turn her head. Baba quote, God is in us, with us, above us, below us, and around us. Various groups of you have heard various quotes over and over again, so these are not unfamiliar to you. In fact, you are God. If you identify yourself with the world and think I am so and so, he says, you will remain separate from God. That begs to be reread. If you identify yourself with the world and think I'm so and so, you will remain separate from God. The world is a projection of our mind, Baba says. You are not your mind. You are God. Baba Divine Discourse, Prashanti, November 22nd, 2009. Our essence is divine. It's pure. It's unborn. It's undying. It cannot sin. It does not gossip of all things. It's pure love. Unlike our mind, body, skin, and bone self, it cannot tell a lie. It is not aware of fear. It's a foreign language to them. How can we receive this gift from Baba that others walking among us have? Well, we already have it. You know that too. And it is ours more so automatically when we focus increasingly on our divine essence. Many of you are already there. You're already at that point. You're on the cusp of or at the point of self-realization. I wouldn't be surprised that I'm talking to those of you who are there right now. And for those of you who don't feel close yet to that point, or maybe you don't even have the interest of feeling close to that point, I hope some of these words, even a handful of these words, can be useful. Not my words, Baba's words. Baba tells us that we can awaken to truth in this lifetime. I know this sounds quite confusing, if not impossible, but it needn't be either one of those things. We can hold 2 thoughts at the same time. I never thought we could, but I know we can. First thought, I am Maya. I am the illusory mind-body Ted. No longer Ted with a capital T, that's Ted with a small t. I am a dream. I'm a dream that seems real. You betcha it seems real. Second thought, I am Atma. How do I know that? Sai Baba tells me so. He teaches me so. His experiences tell me so. And because of Baba's guidance, and His love and His grace, we are also growing, all of us, in finding all of this out for ourselves. As with many of you, I feel His presence always. 2 quotes back to back from Baba. Because of the body consciousness, man is forgetting the inherent divinity that he is. If you allow bad feelings to enter the heart, it will be polluted. The divine will have no place therein. Baba Divine Discourse, May 20th, 1993. Quote number 2, your deepest innermost urge is to return to yourself, to love yourself, to be the being in awareness and bliss, which is all you have ever been. A quote like that simply begs the question, why wait? What exactly is it like to awaken? Repeat after me, I am God, I am God. These are not empty words for anybody. So what does it feel like? This is what I've gleaned from my years of interviewing others who are already there. The first thing you know is that they're not the name that's printed on their driver's license. For one thing, you're not your driver's license. Your name is I am. It's not Ted. You know your name is Atma. There is nothing else to be. That took me forever to learn. There's nothing else to be. Awaken, you know you will never die. All fear leaves you. You will never again accept anything on faith alone. That's an interesting phrase. You absolutely know there's only one truth, no matter what's going on in the turbulence of this world today. Most awakened people tell you it's as if they've had a spiritual download. 2 things. They know the answer to every spiritual question in life. They don't know the answer to anything else in world order because there is no world order. They know the essence of truth. And I hear this from people in different ways, and I would say to people I really admire and I continue to have discussions and correspondence with, well, how did you know that? Well, how did you figure that out? Well, I didn't figure it out. I never learned it. It's part of they wouldn't use the word download, but that's my euphemism for a lot of people, source of information. Part of the new calmness they experience means there's nothing more to worry about or to be anxious over. How many of us carry anxiety in our minds and in our thoughts and in our guts? There are no more crises in your life, meaning that when a crisis strikes, you might feel the sting of it for a moment or two, but its pain is far less intensive than ever before, and the duration of the pain is far, far, far less than ever before. I mean, they're gone like overnight or before. To say this in a different way, you live in perpetual equanimity. Only Atma is real. Eternal awareness, eternal consciousness, eternal being. We often leave out bliss. Bliss is eternal also. I just don't want you to forget about that. It's part of the big payoff. That's the poor choice of words, but it's very meaningful. This process of awakening self-realization seems to be an impossible mountain to climb, but it really isn't. It always seemed that way to me, but now I know it's not. There are people around us who are doing it all the time. Here's Baba on this very subject as he answers a devotee's question. Swami, is there really no higher being related uniquely to this body who is judging me? Baba would say to that, you are still 100% kid and body consciousness. I made up the kid word. Do not stay with body consciousness. Remove it, take it away. What will remain will be God consciousness. There will be no more anxiety, no more anger, no more hatred, no more envy, no jealousy, no desire, no ego, no nothing. Only pure joy, complete bliss. And my promise to you tonight, if you care to know it, if I dare to be able to make a promise, all of this begins before self-realization sinks in, except for those rare human beings who have it happen like that for themselves. Baba says to us, do not stay with this body consciousness. Remove it. Take it away. Well, that sounds so easy, Baba. Why don't you just do it for me? No. You have to learn to do this on your own because you can. Look around you. You'll begin to recognize awakened people, to which I add, talk to them. If you think you're recognizing people who are self-aware, self-attuned, self-realized, awakened, go up to them and talk to them. If they are really awakened, they will invite your curiosity. They will invite your questions. They will answer them to your heart's content, and they'll keep talking to you if you want to keep listening to them. They have a message to share and nobody to share it with because they won't push themselves on anyone else. Take it from me. I have all these interviews under my belt and all this courage I mustered, and here I am 78, still learning how to approach people and to get these wonderful, earth-changing, life-changing dimensions of who we are from them just by following my curiosity with them. Baba quotes, Swami, what is the best way to relate to the world? Do not think about the world. He underscores think. Do not spend time thinking about your relationships to others. These are all impermanent. They will not last. Pay attention to that which will last, which is permanent. The body is like a water bubble. The mind is like a mad monkey. Do not follow them. Instead, follow the voice of God. It is the voice of unchanging truth inside you, and it will direct you towards the highest good. Well, I now think the voice of God in me as the self. I think of it as Baba, and I talk to it daily, as I know all of you do, or probably all of you do many times as I do, to seek guidance. And the only difference between the old me and the new me is I start noticing the guidance. Someone told me, but Ted, what are you talking about? This is dualism you're talking about. This is dualistic. How do you account for that? And I would say there's two ways to look at self, good friend. The Ted self, also known as the I thought, as Maya, as the illusory self. And then there's the God self, as Baba calls it, or the I am, or the pure self, or the Baba self. It's all the same. And one of those two does not exist. What I've learned, and I've learned this from teachers who told me to look for this to happen, and then I started to experience it happening. You're 100% familiar with 100% of body consciousness until you're not. I'm only 99% connected to this now. Oh, maybe I'm down to the high 80s. You start to see the separation going on where there is self. There is one self. And that which you always thought you were just dissipates. I mean, it actually does. And you can track it and you can notice it and be encouraged to go further in the probe inward to have it dissipate more and more and more. Baba quote, one of the last ones, embodiments of love. God is not separate from you. You are God. Inquire and understand this truth. If the whole of your life is spent up in work, then when will you ever practice what I'm here to teach you? Baba, Divine Discourse, November 23rd, 1998. When are you ever going to practice who you really are, is what Baba is saying here. You might as well be right in every side group I've ever been saying the same thing. Our lives are so chock-a-block full of family, love, career, and seva. Baba said, you are God. Inquire and understand this truth. Could he be any more direct? I mean, the many times he said this with different words. So how do we go about finding our true self? First, this short Baba quote, if you want something, you must ask for it. Ask for help. Ask for Baba to guide us. Just so I'm clear, I know very well all of you talk to Baba all the time, as I do. And I ask for things. I've learned not to ask for things that are unreasonable anymore. I ask for very little. What I do ask for is continuing guidance. I don't even specify, mostly I don't even specify what the guidance is for that I really want them to talk about. And we might add something more here, just to spend a half a second on it. If you seriously think about embarking on this path, as I think he directs us all to do, we might ask to find a little more silence in our life. Baba's not talking about our nighttime sleep silence. He wants us to expand. He's talking about our daytime intentional silence by turning inward. Practice self-inquiry, self-investigation. Meditation works. Just being. One of Jody's favorite phrases. Baba quote, one of the last ones, "Only when the mind is completely under control can man grasp his true identity. Then all troubles, all travails, doubts, and dilemmas come to an end. They go. Man then overcomes sorrow, disillusion, anxiety. He is established in the holy calmness of Shanti. Spiritual life is not a matter of meaningless talk. It is an experience of pure bliss." Baba's quote for the day is written at Prashanti on April 4th, 2009. For those of us who are too busy to stop daily for something like this, my advice is pretend you're back in the third grade, which I had to do, and do it slowly. What do you mean by slowly, Ted? Do it for 5 minutes a day. Really, seriously. Make it genuine. Know what you're doing. No more than 5 minutes. Take a breath. Close your eyes. Try to silence that spinning gerbil wheel of thought after thought. Just let it settle down and go away for a while. Just be for 5 minutes. It works if you try it more than once. With our deepest attention, as we learn to turn inward, finding out who we are, change in us begins to occur. And once again, we notice it. Baba quote, "Do not tell me that you don't care for bliss, that you are satisfied with delusion. I know people who are satisfied with delusion. Your basic nature abhors the dull, dreary routine of eating and drinking and sleeping. It seeks something that it knows it has lost, inward contentment. It seeks liberation and bondage to the trivial and to the temporary. Everyone craves it to be in their heart of hearts, and it is available in only one shop. Contemplation is the highest self. It is the basis of all. Contemplation, Baba says, just another euphemism, just another word for turning inward." In a slightly different Baba quote, "There are those who think that the world exists and that the world is real." You've heard this one before. "There are others who think the world does not exist, that it's not real. Rare indeed is that blessed one who does not think, but who is ever calm, abiding in the absolute." Rare indeed is the blessed one who does not think. Rare is he who does not think. Is that even possible? Yes, it's possible. I don't want to say it's for advanced people outside of our realm of practice, but there are Baba people living this way today who do not think. Let's talk about our thoughts. I have to think when I'm making dinner for my wife any night. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer and shopper for food. She does everything else, by the way, but I do that. I have to think about whose phone calls. I have to think about who I'm going to return phone calls to in the next morning. These are necessary thoughts. They're not even thoughts. They're instinctive. What we're talking about here are the thousands and thousands of unnecessary thoughts that we entertain. Want to guess how many thoughts pass through our minds every day? When I interviewed for Souljourns Swami Sarva Priyananda, he said, "Look, I've got an engineering background. I'm a scientist." He said that lovingly and with a straight face. 70,000 thoughts pass through our mind every day. And I've learned something more about those thoughts from Baba devotees I talk to who are awakened. They tell me that fully 95% of those thoughts are completely unnecessary. If they never happened, you'd be better off. I talked to others who said they're wrong. It's more than 99% of those thoughts are completely, totally unnecessary. So when Baba says, "Rare indeed is that blessed one who does not think, but who is ever calm, abiding in the absolute," we know how to become that one and join. Legions is too big of a word, but to join the multitude of other people who are getting there before us. Baba quote, and this is the shortest quote of the day, "No one can know God who has not known himself." That's pretty potent. 10 words, that's all it is. The only subject I choose to talk about for the last 25 years. I'm not asked very often, but that's it. I tell people right up front, it's going to be boring to your people. They probably won't appreciate it, but that's all I know to talk about. No one can know God who has not known himself, herself. That's really bigger than it sounds. Meaning, if we really want to know Baba, if we really wish to know the truth of our own most genuine identity, we must first learn how to dig. Start digging. Keep digging. Go deeper and deeper, and it never ends. One question might be asked of me, why is it, Ted, why is it that you occasionally include references to other spiritual people other than Sai Baba from time to time? Some of you might not be aware of why I do this. I'll take 30 seconds. I began doing interviews with holy people and religious leaders of all traditions long before I ever met Sai Baba. I still do that today. This is when I was a television journalist in Cleveland. I worked for 44 years in broadcasting. I continue to do these interviews today. I'm a reporter. Baba made me a reporter. Interviews with followers of Mother Teresa, Ramana Maharshi, A Course in Miracles, Swami Sarva Priyananda, Amma Karunamai, priests, rabbis, bishops, and even Mother Mira. Anybody here know of Mother Mira? And on the last day in Germany by myself this time, before going to India, I told her that I was going to go see Sai Baba in India and said, go, he is God. Since then, I've done this with interviews, occasionally putting up people who are not Sai Baba followers, but for the most part, I've got 500 interviews here on YouTube. And today, it's been 27 years. It's Jody's idea to do Souljourns. She's the one who nudged me to think about doing it. Neither one of us had any idea this would last for more than a year or so. About 95% of all the interviews up on YouTube right now under the banner of Souljourns are with Sai Baba devotees. Maybe 4 or 5% with other people. And about Ramana Maharshi, whom I mentioned here, I was a boy when he died. He was not a guru, certainly. He was certainly not an avatar. He became enlightened at 16 and spent the rest of his life answering questions. A final word about Ramana Maharshi. He once uttered a one-sentence statement about going inward, which is quite important to take in. It's a great companion quote, I feel, to Baba's extraordinary teachings on this topic that you've heard tonight, a thimbleful of the many quotes taken from books, from lectures, from discourses, from conversations. If only people knew these quotes, I think it would make a bit of a difference. In this quote that Ramana uttered, he said, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render to the world. That's Seva. In almost all of the Baba quotes I've chosen for tonight, there is an explicit and implicit reference to act now to uncover the absolute truth of who you are and shed all the untruths. I often begin by asking myself, who am I? By telling myself who I know now I am not. I'm not the guy on the driver's license. I'm not the name on the door at work when I used to go back to work. I'm not the home that I own. I'm not the car that I own. I get to Family Matters and I choke up. But the truth is, you're not who you think you are. Anyone can do this. Age is not a matter whatsoever. You can be 88. You can be 28. You can be 18. Listen to 2 final quotes here. Remember that with every step, you are nearing God. There is no stopping place in this pilgrimage. It is one continuous journey through day and night, through valley and desert, through tears and smiles, through death and birth, through tomb and womb. And when the road ends and the goal is gained, the pilgrim finds that he has traveled only from himself to himself. He's gone from Maya to Atma. And he spent 80 years doing that. He realizes that the journey was long and lonesome, but the God that led him here, and all the while in him and around him and with him and beside him. Baba quote taken from Jack Hislop's book, My Baba and I. My final Baba quote. Do not fritter away your energies, playing the silly game of gaining and losing, gathering and scattering, winning temporary fame, fortune, and felicity. Instead, go straight upon the royal road that leads to self-realization. And do not stray into the bylines of counterfeit bliss. This does not mean that you have to give up kith and kin. I've always wondered about that. And foot it all alone. The community in which you find yourself now, he says, is the very arena where you can win this victory. It is the gymnasium where you can develop the skill to win self-realization. Wow. This is our community, isn't it? The Baba community is the very best community on the face of the earth. There are some very good ones. This is the best. For those of us who haven't noticed, the world is in a sorrowful, pitiful, suffering mess. It's going through a period of great illness, tremendous suffering. The journalist in me has spent 59 years interviewing and talking to thousands of people, not knowing what I might find, not knowing what I might learn. It was never boring. Many prominent people can be just simply too busy, sometimes too insulated to notice that whole lives, whole careers, whole religions, whole families are falling apart in every continent on the earth today. And people are scared as never before since the end of World War II. I was born exactly 1 month after the end of World War II in October of 1945. Like you, I've tried to help others. For 28 years, I recorded Sai Baba devotees on Souljourns. I can see those days are coming to an end. For 2 years back in the 60s, I worked in the second poorest country behind Haiti and all of the Americas, as I told you earlier. And like you, I have lived and worked in the wealthiest, smartest country on the face of the earth. But overall, I have not done well in helping more people than I thought maybe I might be capable of doing. We trust Baba, yet at the same time the world suffers. Many people live in fear. I believe in my heart that the single best way in which we can help others and at the same time help ourselves is to remind ourselves that our own self-realization, as lofty as that sounds, as impossible as it sounds, is the greatest service we can render to others. It's quite a journey from Maya to Atma. I'm on that journey. I suffer less than ever. I'm less anxious than ever. I'm less fearful than ever. I still have these things because I haven't finished this journey. And maybe part of it's intellectual, maybe part of it's mind over matter. It doesn't matter to me. I'm so grateful for Baba putting me here. It's my belief that with Baba's help, once one embarks upon this extraordinary idea of awakening, for lack of a better word, the idea of awakening, they will never turn back. Follow the Master. Sai Baba. Thank you.